The Taurus TX22 seems to be the hot thing on gun reviews lately, following the Glock 44 22. And a lot of the reviews seem to be very much praiseworthy of this TX22. Riders Range had to try it out. We don't own one, but I do want to start out by thanking a good friend of mine, John Swarthout. His granddaughter, Lily, also known as McGrit. I'm sure there's a story behind that, but Lily was kind enough to loan me her TX22 for this review, and I'm highly appreciative. Thanks, Lily, or thanks, McGrit, whichever you prefer, but thank you very much for loaning us this gun, and in turn, you loaned me the gun with 2 magazines, you're getting it back with 5, so I bought extra magazines for this gun, and I don't have a TX22, although after this outing with your gun, I may have to get them. But anyway, you're going to get those extra 3 magazines just for being kind enough to loan me this gun, so thank you very much. Alright, so Riders Range put this thing to the test. We didn't do a 1,000-round test like the Honest Outlaw did, but we did put more than 300 rounds through this, and you can see a sampling on the desk here of these are 7 of the 10 different types of ammunition that we put through it, and we only had, out of those 300 plus rounds, only a couple of failures, and I'm not going to rate anyone but 1 out of those 300 that's gun related. We'll talk a little bit more about those as we go on. Right, it wasn't my intention to start this out as a comparison video, but it's really hard to not compare the Taurus TX22 with a couple of other guns, the Smith & Wesson M&P 22, and of course the Glock 44. I know there are a number of other channels that have compared the Glock 44 to the Taurus. Probably even a couple out there that have compared the Smith. Now this is an older Smith, not necessarily the latest model, but it's a pretty good gun. Now when you compare this with the Glock 44, easy to compare because the guns are just about the same length, pretty similar sight radius, but they're not quite the same height. The Taurus is longer in the grip than the Glock is. The Glock would be better compared with maybe the Smith & Wesson M&P 22 compact, but this gun does compare, the Taurus that is, compares very nicely with the Smith & Wesson M&P 22. Now this is the full size, not the compact. Again, barrel's a little longer on the Smith, but when you look at the grips, they're about the same height. So all these guns also are different in a lot of ways, not the least of which is price. Starting out, the Taurus is definitely the value leader on this. We'll get back to that in just a minute. The Glock at the other end, now the Glock has a manufacturer's suggested retail in excess of $400. But they're going on the open market right now for about $350. In fact, that's what I paid for this one. The M&P, finding mainly compacts out there, but these go for a little north of $400 retail. And again, you can buy them all day long for about $350. The Glock on the other end, I did find a used one for $300. But that's where the Taurus, again, I believe, is the value leader on this, coming in at an MSRP of $349, and you can find them all day long for $300 or lower than that even. And I did find a pre-owned one, only one pre-owned one on the Gunbroker, and it was going for $340 at with 6 bids so far. I don't know what it'll end up at, but that's also plus 30 shipping. So again, you can buy a new one for about what you'd end up paying for the used one on that. But there are comparisons, and let's start with the weight. Start with the heavy one here. The weight on the Smith & Wesson, loaded with 12 rounds in the magazine, and these are metal magazines, by the way, and that's what it is, a 12-round magazine in the Smith. And the gun empty, and I normally don't do empty weights, but the only way to really compare these, since they have different capacities, is look at both. So the Smith & Wesson with an empty weight of 20.7 ounces, a loaded weight of 24.3 ounces. That's the heavy weight of the group. The Glock is at the other extreme with an empty weight of 12.6 ounces and a loaded weight of 16 ounces. That's with 10 rounds, only 10 rounds. And the Taurus naturally comes in right about the middle. It's 15.9 ounces empty, 19.2 fully loaded, but that's with 16 rounds in the magazine. Now Glock said they couldn't do more than 10 rounds and have reliability and still have it being reliable. Well, Taurus certainly found a way to do that. And again, as long as we're doing this and talking about comparisons here, some of the other comparisons, the triggers are, you can call them comparable. The Glock has a typical Glock trigger, and this one is pretty consistent at almost 6 pounds, but it's a Glock. Smith & Wesson, on the other hand, and by the way, you can't pull the trigger on the Smith unless you have a magazine inserted, and I wouldn't be surprised if it says that on here somewhere. It doesn't. This is actually, the Smith is actually made by Karl Walther in Germany, and it's got a 2-piece trigger. Moving the bottom part, you can see, moves the tab out of the way, and this trigger though breaks very cleanly and consistently at 3 pounds 4 ounces. Very nice trigger in this, and long reset though. Long reset, well, that you can't even, you can barely feel it, but it's about halfway up. On the other hand, the Taurus is consistent at 3 pounds 9 ounces, and something I haven't seen in any other reviews on this gun. This gun has kind of an interesting trigger. It doesn't have that ridiculous safety tab, which, by the way, isn't a safety in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't have the 2-piece trigger like it does on the Smith, which also has that little safety tab in there. They do it a little different on the Taurus. This trigger, actually, it's a pivoting trigger, but the first part of the pivot is what works the safety, and then from there, it actually, you can see it slides back, not quite 1911 style, but then it pivots the rest of the way. So it's a combination of pivoting and sliding trigger, which is rather interesting, and it worked out very well for me. Nice clean break, short tactile reset, and short clean pull again. I like the trigger on this Taurus, and I've heard a lot of good reviews on it. Something that a lot of people don't like, though, is the fact that this gun comes with a manual safety. And I'm a 1911 guy, as you know by watching any of the other Riders Range videos, so you know I like manual safeties, and I still ride my thumb on top to safety. Now, I saw a review recently, a 1,000-round review on this gun by the Honest Outlaw, as I mentioned at the beginning, and he said that he can't work it right. His hands are much bigger than mine. If you watch his videos, you know that he does a lot of shooting and is a very, very good shot. He has trouble. I don't. Maybe it's just the difference in the size of my hands. Safety is ambidextrous on this gun, and safety, of course, on the Smith & Wesson is also ambidextrous, and it is a little more pronounced, although it's also a little higher up, maybe a little bit more difficult to get a typical high thumb 1911 style position on this. But I like having a safety Glock. Bear in mind, this Glock is about 85% cocked with no safety, and again, this is not a safety there on the trigger. Let's see, a couple other things on these guns. The Taurus has a rail. If you want to hang your lunch from this or whatever it is you hang. It's a 22. Am I going to hang anything from it? No, absolutely not. Slightly larger rail on the Smith & Wesson. Just a 1-position rail on the Glock. Maybe they don't plan on having you hang anything on that, and I can't say that I blame them. Oh, let's see, what else? Glock, typical Glock texture. I don't know why this is turning into a real comparison. That's not what I intended. The Smith & Wesson is, at least this model, is relatively smooth. The Taurus seems to be kind of the just right grip. It's not real heavy textured like sandpaper or skateboard tape, but it does grip in all the right places, and this grip feels really, really good in the hand. It does not have interchangeable back straps like the Glock does, but again, this gun just fits. Really large trigger guard. Get in there with gloved hands with no problem, and work it. It's you got more room in there than you do in the Glock. Even just a little bit more than you do initially in the Smith & Wesson. They're all flat top slide profiles. The difference is there's no ejection port cutout on the top of the slide on the Taurus, so you could probably land a Cessna 152 on that without too much trouble. It's nice having the cutout on the top. If you have any kind of a malfunction, it's easier to clear it, and that's necessary on a Glock. not as necessary really on the Taurus. At least I haven't found it to be. But if you do have a stuck case or something in there, it's a little harder to get to without that cutout on the top of the slide. Adjustable sights. These are white 3-dot sights. You know my opinion on 3-dot sights by now. But they do work okay, and as you'll see in the shooting, we managed to reach out and touch plates at 50 yards. This is adjustable for windage and elevation. The adjustments for elevation are a little on the coarse side, but again, I managed to get it dialed in okay. The Glock, of course, is also adjustable for windage and elevation, and the notoriously terrible Glock sights. Smith & Wesson is only drift adjustable for windage, but it does have a nice fiber optic front sight, which again is kind of nice for quick shooting. What else about the Taurus? Easy takedown on this. Pull the trigger, pull it back just a hair, and there's 2 tabs. Slide comes right off, and from there it disassembles like a Glock or any other. And it's actually 1 tab. But it's available on both sides, and you do have to pull down. At least I had to pull down on both sides to get it to work. Reassembly is fairly straightforward. And put it down, slide it to the rear, and it's there. Nice and easy to take apart. One thing this does have that the others don't, and you don't see it initially, but when you got the barrel back, there is a the end of the barrel here is easily removable with a 3/8 inch wrench, and pop that off. It comes with this adapter, which you thread right on. And lo and behold, this gun will take a suppressor. And we did some shooting with a suppressor on this, and it works out really, really nice. Very nice gun to shoot with a suppressor, particularly with this light Silencer Co. Warlock 2 suppressor. The suppressor only weighs a few ounces, and it's small enough so I don't need suppressor height sights with this gun. Now, fully loaded with the suppressor on it, this thing is still only 22.7 ounces. It's a really light gun. It's a fun gun to shoot suppressed, and it was really nice of Taurus to not have a big knob sticking out there on the end of the barrel, but still to be able to run a suppressor on the gun. Again, real easy to change. Pop this back on, snug it down with a 3/8 inch wrench, and just about flush. Very, very nice. Magazines are a little bit of an issue, but not so much with this. Now the magazines on this gun do have the 2 tabs, there's 1 on each side, that you can pull down as you're loading. It also comes with a loader that you can push down and load 1 round at a time, like a number of semi-auto magazines. I tried it this way. I found it's a whole lot easier for me to just grab the buttons and pull down. Now they're not really pronounced. They're not quite recessed, but they're flush with the tracks of the magazine. And I think it was 22 Plinkster said that when he loads them, he just finds he just sticks them in like loading any 9mm or regular semi-auto magazine. But it wasn't any problem getting 16 rounds in here. And the Glock, of course, has 2 tabs also, and if you're looking for tabs to pull down, Glocks are probably the easiest to get. They're the largest, and they're very pronounced traction on them. And it even has an arrow showing you which way to put the cartridge in, and if you don't know that, then you really need to get some instruction on your gun anyway. Smith & Wesson, of course, has metal magazines, and it's got 1 button on the side of the Smith magazines, and it does work to pull it down. Not quite as easy as the Glock, and interesting on the magazines, there's a huge difference in the width of the magazine. Smith & Wesson magazine, Glock magazine, and in the middle is the Taurus magazine. So the Glock fat magazine, you got 10 rounds. The metal slim magazine for the Smith, you got 12. And for the Taurus, the in-between magazine, you got 16 rounds. Really, really nice. what else about this? Oh, one other thing that I am not quite as fond of. Now, the magazine release is ambidextrous. You can switch sides. It does take a little bit of work, but not a lot. But it's not quite as easy to get a good push on that magazine release, because it is really flush with this part of the grip frame right here. You can do it, but it's not quite as quick. Glock is fairly easy. It's quite pronounced. It's large. The Smith is definitely the easiest, with the button that sticks out the most and makes it real easy to drop a magazine. Oh, speaking of magazines, magwells. Not much of a magwell on here, but then again, you're probably not using them for competition speed loading. The magwell on the Smith & Wesson is a little bit more pronounced. Magwell king is the Glock. Definitely a big gaping hole there to insert a magazine, but then again, let's use an empty one here. Inserting that magazine in the Glock, you're only getting 10 rounds out of it, so they need a big hole for a big magazine that doesn't give you much. Smith & Wesson, no problem sticking one in there. And of course, for the Taurus, I still don't have any problem running the magazine in. Magazines sit nice and flush. There is an indentation in the grip frame on both sides to where you can easily grab a magazine if it doesn't come out, but it does drop out okay. All right, so how does this gun shoot? It shoots very well. We ran 10, before we even started the video, we ran 10 different kinds of ammunition through it. I ran Aguila, I ran Normatec 22, CCI Standard, CCI Mini Mags, and CCI Stangers. And the Mini Mag is the only one that I actually had a gun problem with, and I think that was in the magazine issue, the second or third round. Took a nosedive and wouldn't feed, and I had to readjust the position of the cartridge in the magazine to get it to feed. After that, they ran okay. I ran 3 or 4 magazines of the CCI Mini Mags with only that one problem. Let's see, we ran Remington Thunderbolts, Remington Champion BYOB, the bring your own bucket of bullets, I guess. Remington Vipers, Federal Gold Medal Target, and we had trouble with those too, but I've had trouble with that Gold Medal Target in a lot of different guns. I had, I think it was the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds of, or 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, can't remember which, on one magazine that didn't eject. They would extract, but it would stovepipe and not eject, or stovepipe out the side anyway. And after those first 3, I ran the rest of the magazine with no problem. We did have a couple that failed to fire, but that's typical of 22s. We had one of the Remington BYOBs failed to fire, and I had another out of the first lot. Can't remember what it was, but again, not at all unusual out of a 22. I ran plates with this thing. I did a rapid fire of 16 rounds at the silhouette at 12 yards. And we put the Silencer Co. Warlock 2 suppressor on it, and using the Remington Champion BYOB bullets, we ran a magazine full out of the Silencer Co. Very nice shooting gun, and it was hitting the 10-inch plate at a fairly good pace at 25 yards, no problem. And then we put the mini mags in it and went out to 50 yards, and it was hitting all the plates, not every single time. But that's not the gun's fault. That's mine. So it is accurate enough at 50 yards. Now, would I want to trust myself for small game at 50 yards with this pistol? Probably not. That's what a rifle's for. But it did work. So, all in all, again, I didn't start this out to be a comparison, but I can't help but compare it with the Smith & Wesson and with the Glock. And now I own the Smith & Wesson, I own the Glock, and again, I really, really want to thank McGrit, John's granddaughter, for loaning me this gun. And you know, Lily, if this didn't belong to you, it just belonged to John, I'd say come get it from me. But since it belongs to you, I will return it. But it's a really, really nice shooting gun, and highly reliable. They figured out how to get 16 rounds in it. Glock hasn't figured that out. Now I almost regret buying the Glock, although I carried a Glock on duty for 24 years, so I still had to have the Glock. So there it is. That's just a quick, I don't know how quick this was, but a look at the Taurus TX22, and it's definitely the value leader, and right now the reliability leader. Love that little gun. If you like this video, we certainly appreciate a thumbs up. If you like Riders Range videos in general, by all means, subscribe. Please click on the notifications, and we're still trying to grow the channel, so please share this. Let your friends know that Riders Range exists. And we appreciate comments on this video. Drop them in the comment section below. Comments on anything else, things that you might like to see. We've got several good emails back so far with good suggestions on videos that we're going to be doing in the not too distant future. Send that to info@ridersrange.com. You want to see a list? I haven't been real good at keeping my website up, but a list of what we've done and what we're going to be doing is on our website, www.ridersrange. We're trying to remember to post on Facebook periodically, and I'm still going to make the time someday to learn Twitter and Instagram. We've already got the account set up on those, so at some point we'll start doing a little more posting. So that's it. The Taurus TX22 is definitely a winner. Like I say, Honest Outlaw put 1,000 rounds through it successfully. A lot of people have a lot of good things to say about that Taurus, and the one in the middle here is my absolute favorite of these three guns. Thank you for visiting Riders Range.